Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Black Space Live presents The Practical Christian. I'm your host, Lamar Finley. I am extraordinarily pleased y'all can join me tonight for what should be a good conversation. But listen, before I get started, do me a favor. Like this video, click subscribe, and share. Share the content. It's going to be some good content tonight. This is my judge-free zone, so just relax. I'm not throwing any darts unless you receive them. So the reason I decided this is a conversation for those of you that do follow me also on Clubhouse. Conversation I have on Friday nights on Clubhouse, which you're always welcome to join. Conversation starts at 9 o'clock on Clubhouse. So if you haven't downloaded that app as well, download the app. But we brought this, first of all, grateful to Nate to allow me to bring this conversation to this platform here on YouTube. But this is a conversation I've been having weekly, and so we're going to do the same thing here on our Black Space channel. We're going to have a good conversation that we talk about everything from relationships to politics from a Christian standpoint, but from a practical Christian standpoint. A lot of Christians, and I don't want to get ahead of myself. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So let me start from the top. The reason I started this conversation was my disappointment rather in the black church specifically, but the church overall. I had a huge disappointment with the way that we're doing things in the church. And yes, and we've had the conversation. For those of you that watch Black Space Live, you've watched us have the conversation about the church, the state of the black church, and the conclusion in that conversation was, the church does have a lot of work to do, but there's a lot to be desired from the church. But there's a lot to be desired of Christians. And so my reason for wanting to have this conversation is that, a lot of Christians, we're called to be fishers of men. We're called to be the light of the world. We're called to be the salt of the earth. But a lot of Christians are, as my pastor would say all the time, they're very heavenly minded. They're no earthly good. And so I decided to have a conversation and talk to Christians about how do you walk this walk and be practical about it. Because let's be honest, right? The law is difficult to uphold, right? But you want to be effective, right? You want to be effective. At the end of the day, you want to win, right? You want to win. And I'm not just talking about winning on souls. I'm talking about winning at this walk. But you want to find a way to walk it practically, give some useful information, right? Have conversations that we don't like to have in the church, that the church should be having, but they don't have. How to teach you how to do things day to day that's practical, right? In addition to, the praying and getting in your word, those things are great. But if you can't apply it, what's the point, right? What's the point? I was inspired to do this because, I struggle finding a church home, right? Because it's hard. How do you find a church that teaches properly? And then when they teach you properly, you gotta pull yourself away from why am I here? Am I here for the worship? Am I here for the word? And then it's like, how do I apply this again practically? And so we're gonna have conversations because people struggle at work, they struggle with tithing, they struggle with everything. So I'm gonna talk about it, in layman's terms, so that we can have, a conversation and we can, better our walk. Now, a little bit about me, just for clarity, I'm not here to judge anybody. Anything I say about y'all, it applies to me as well. I'm not perfect. I've made plenty of mistakes. I'm making mistakes. I made mistakes today. I'm going to make mistakes tomorrow. But the point of the conversation is to remove the judgment, although there's accountability, right? We got to be accountable, right? But let's remove the soapbox. Let's remove it let's step off it for just a moment and let's have a conversation. Now, I started my walk when I was 13 years old. I remember I was at an abortion clinic, right? I didn't know at the time it was an abortion clinic. I saw a bunch of women outside protesting and this white woman, and I know that her race and gender might not be important, but she was a white woman. A white woman I was curious because I'm a nosy guy, right? Yeah, I got a big nose, y'all. I'm nosy. So I'm a nosy guy. I went to this white woman. I said, what y'all doing out here? And she said, she didn't go into detail about the abortion. She didn't talk about killing babies, none of that stuff. She told me that they were out there protesting something that they are against. They were protesting something that they believe deeply in. She never went into deep detail about what they were protesting. And looking back, I kind of respect her for that decision because, young 13-year-old, very impressionable. She could have, she could have taken that opportunity um, to quote unquote brainwash. I know a lot of atheists or non-Christians say, well, she brainwashed you with Christianity. Nah, because I grew up in the church, like a lot of black people did. I grew up in the church. I knew who Jesus was. I didn't officially give my life yet, but I knew who he was. I understood some of the Christian principles. But she began to immediately minister to me, ask me, have you given your life to Christ, et cetera, et cetera? Do you know what that means? Are you familiar? And of course, I expressed the things that I was familiar with, and I let her know things I wasn't familiar with. And I told her, no, I'm not. And she asked me, would you like to? And I said, yeah. And she prayed the sinner's prayer with me that day. And that's the day I gave my life to Christ. I was 13. 13. And looking back, I respect her for one, not draw me into a political conversation. Because one of the things that we do as Christians is we try to tie our faith into politics. And they don't run congruent with each other. They don't. I don't care how you try to stack it up. They don't. They don't. But she didn't have this conversation about abortion, and she was obviously a pro-lifer. I shouldn't say obviously, but she was a pro-lifer. But she didn't go into conversation about that. Nope, it wasn't political. It was a ministry conversation. She took the opportunity to minister. And I appreciate her for that. She was very sensitive to the fact that I was a 13-year-old kid, and she didn't I thought, at least looking back, I thought she was very careful how she approached the conversation. And I appreciate her for that ministry moment. Because as we as Christians, we believe that people cross paths for a reason. Maybe that was my wake up call, right? My Christian wake up call. It's time for you to get on the road. That was my um, Jericho Road moment, right? So to speak, right? It's time for me to begin to walk the walk. But I bring up my story, and of course, since then, and my mom's a minister. Like I said, I grew up in the church. I was very involved in some very great ministry. Shout out to Parkland Assembly of God in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Amazing, amazing ministry. Probably the best ministry I've ever been a part of. They teach and they do a lot of community outreach. They are striving to be the center of the community, and that's what churches should be doing. Do the work, walk the walk. Don't just talk the talk. I know Christians that can quote scripture backwards and forwards. They can Exodus, they can backwards and forwards. Now, I'm not that good. I'm not going to sit a lot and pretend like I am. I do know the word, but I don't know it that well. If I can tell you what scripture, line, and verse, I'm not that good. But those people that can do it, their walk is terrible. Or maybe their walk is good, but they can't assist others. They can't draw anybody in. They can't, and they struggle. And a lot of those people struggle with a lot of day-to-day stuff. It's kind of like the person that has a degree in business, right? But doesn't have the soft skills to go to work and be a productive employee. They struggle. They struggle big time. They may have the book smarts, right? But they can't apply it. And a lot of Christians struggle with this. They can pray and shana na, he bo bo bo, they can speak in tongues but they can't they can't apply any of that stuff in their day-to-day lives, let alone minister to people in a way that's effective, without soapboxing or being too preachy. And again, if that works for you, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. But a lot of people, it just doesn't work for them. How do you walk this walk and it be practical? One thing that I hate as a Christian, I hate that I have to say this when I tell people that I'm a Christian. I always have to get that disclaimer, right? I'm a Christian, but I'm not the judgy, you're going to hell type Christian, right? It's a shame that we have to give that disclaimer because a lot of us do soapbox other people. We don't understand that we were and are those people. As much as we try to separate ourselves from quote unquote regular sinners, we're still sinners. And so in these conversations, and again, I'm going to be open, I'm going to have guests. As with the clubhouse, it's an open conversation. Let's talk about it. You know, I'll be reading comments as this platform grows, and we'll have a conversation. You know, preferably we'll maybe bring some more into the family. If not, we'll strengthen our family, and we'll make this walk easier. And that's my goal, right? My goal is to make the walk easier, not to withdraw accountability, not to give excuses for bad behavior, any of those kind of things, but just make it more practical. It makes no sense that, people they can go to church 3 and 4 times a week, right? But can't practice that walk effectively in the community in a way that makes some even small change, right? Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let me give you an example of practicality, right? So a lot of people complain about tithing, right? Because, we have this thing in America called prosperity gospel, right? And prosperity gospel teaches that, oh, if you tithe, well, you sow the seeds, these financial blessings are gonna come your way, right? And I just call it the American capitalization of Christianity, 'cause that's what it is, right? American is a capitalist society, and so we've taken that, we've given it a little twist to Christianity. Because when I listen to the Christ talk about rich people, the times that he speaks, he doesn't have a lot of positive things to say. And I often ask the question, well, if Mr. Megachurch prosperity preacher person, you have millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. Why are you not what are you doing with all of this money? How much are you keeping in the storehouse for yourself? And how much are you giving back for the betterment of the community? These are legit criticisms, right? So when we talk about the tithes, right, a lot of people think about that example, right? And a lot of people struggle with it. I was a person that struggled with tithing, right? Should I give 10% to this church? I don't know, Pastor. You drive a Rolls. I don't know. I struggle with this stuff too, right? And so what are some practical things you can do if you struggle with that, right? Donate money to a homeless shelter. Give your 10% to a homeless person. Battered women's shelter. Adoption agency. A youth center where you know what they're doing with the money. You don't have to go to you don't have to go to organizations, right? If that's something that you're struggling with, that's a very practical way to use your tithe to benefit. I know people are going to challenge me on the scripture, but we're investing into the kingdom, right? We're Christians. We're feeding the hungry. These are the things that we can do day to day to make an impact, right? And yeah, I'll be honest. A preacher once preached to me, a very practical way to look at tithe. Listen, this church needs lights. It needs gas. This air conditioning ain't free. These walls have to, there's maintenance that needs to be done. This place, this needs to be up kept and maintained. So that was a practical way to look at my tithes, with respect to the tithes. But again, if you're someone that struggles with that, and you're in a part of a large ministry that you want to do more, you can do more. You can give your 10% where you think the church should be giving its 10%. I live downtown Orlando. There are homeless people all over the place. There's, I want to say, 2 homeless shelters within walking distance of where I'm broadcasting to y'all right now. So instead of tithing, give them a check, 10% check every week. Give them your 10%. It will go to some good use. It's a way of, walking this walk practically. If homelessness is not, if that's not your passion, then, there's battered women shelters, right? There's legal aid societies, for indigent people that need legal representation, you know. I'm not the biggest fan of some of these, like the Cancer Society. Not saying it's not necessary, because I lost a brother to, actually, I've lost a couple relatives, close relatives to cancer. My grandfather and my brother both died of cancer. Um, but I'm not a big fan of the large nonprofits because I don't know. I look at how much of that money actually goes toward cancer research, you know. But on the line of cancer, St. Jude's, they don't charge their patients anything. You can write them a check. There's many ways that we could, if tithing is not your thing, there's other ways that you could, contribute. And these are just one of the many conversations that I'm going to have. Dating is a huge one because relationships they're a hot topic in these social media streets. We all want to talk about relationships because at the end of the day, we're social creatures and we weren't created to be by ourselves. Adam was not by himself; he had Eve, and I should have, Kerry Washington. She's a married woman. See, I just sinned right there. I'm coveting another man's wife. You see what I just did there? Then there's Rihanna ain't married, but she having somebody else's baby. I'm kind of jealous about that. Jokes, y'all. Jokes. Calm down. Calm down. But it's a popular conversation, and Christians struggle. Some Christians struggle with this. How do I approach this and walk upright? Right? How do I approach this conversation? How do I approach the dating life? We're gonna have those conversations because we struggle. Work. How does the Christian perform at work? Right? How's my attitude? How do I represent? Because I mean, again, these are things we struggle. We struggle with. Mental health is another one. That's a big one. I'm definitely going to do shows on mental health because, listen, God can do all things, right? But faith without works is dead. He gave us psychologists and psychiatrists and counselors and, mentors, people that we can talk to and pour into because that's what they do. I cut my arm right now. I can't pray for the healing when God gave me first aid kits and emergency rooms. Prayer is not the end all be all. And it's okay to say that. It's okay to admit that because it's not the end all be all. It's necessary. You got to keep in commune with the Father. You got to pray for people, but it's not the end all be all. Here's one challenge that I have in the church of Christians with respect to politics. A lot of the conservative right, when things happen, our thoughts and prayers. No, 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 no. These people need stuff. I can't walk up to a homeless person right now and walk up to him and I pray your hunger away. If I was a homeless person, I'd swing off on me if they said something like that. I'm hungry. Feed me. And these are the things that we're going to talk about. These are the things that need to be addressed. One of my biggest criticisms of the capital C church is that we've gotten lazy. We've gotten lazy. Yes, we have to change the way that we approach people, right? We have to use these social media streets like I'm using them to get out and reach out to folks. But I think that we've forgotten about the actual hands-on stuff that we could be doing in the community to quote unquote better the community, right? To do the work, to do the work, to do the work. We don't do these things anymore. And yes, I'm going to jump all over the place because that's the nature of this first episode. Just kind of give you an idea of the things I'm going to dive into. And I want to be challenged. Challenge me. If y'all got some better ideas out there that will help with this practical walk, let me know. Let me know because we are here to help each other. This is just my contribution. This is my ministry, so to speak. And I'm going to say it 100 times. This ain't about me. It's not about me. It's about us. And I'm included in that. Because as I've said, I made mistakes. I'm going to keep making mistakes. But when I fall down, I'm going to get right back up again. But I want to dive deep into conversation about this walk. Because again, I don't feel like we're doing, I said, we're not doing the work. A lot of us we put a lot of stock into our elected leaders to do some of the heavy lifting that we can do ourselves. For example, abortions. If Christians are anti-abortion, why aren't we teaching sex education? Why aren't we promoting families and marriage and providing support to these individuals to avoid that? We can do that. We just don't do it because we're afraid of talking about sex. Is something we don't talk about in church at all. We do not. The church is not about like to talk about sex in a practical manner that will apply to its parishioners. They don't. It's pretty much don't do it till you're married or you're going to hell. That's not a practical conversation. You're telling an alcoholic that's trying not to drink to walk down the street where there's taverns on either side of the street. Don't go in them taverns. Stay sober. Just say no. Just say no. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. We live in a sex-crazed society. Sex sells everything. You can scroll on Instagram. You can't scroll on Instagram for 20 seconds without seeing something that is sexual in nature. Or hell, Facebook for that matter, or any of these social media sites. It's gonna be something that's gonna be sexual in nature. Whether it's a scantily dressed woman or a guy with no shirt on or something. And so having a practical conversation about sex to teenage kids that go to church or adults, or even married couples. I find it crazy that church don't even talk to married couples about sex. How are y'all expecting to move if we avoid these topics and these conversations? We never have these conversations. If your church is having these conversations, please let me know. Put a comment in the comments and promote your church that has these real conversations. There is a group that I found that has these conversations. It was a group on Clubhouse that was having a conversation about sex. They were talking about masturbation. It was a good conversation. But we don't have these conversations. The capital C church does not have these conversations. But guess what? People have sex. You don't get 7 billion people on the planet and people ain't having sex. You don't get 7 people on the planet and people ain't having sex outside of marriage. You just don't. And so we need to have these conversations. Yes, conversations. Talk about it. Sex. Yeah, sex. There's nothing wrong with having the conversation. Talking about it. Let's be real. Let's be honest. If you want to, with respect to politics, this is a personal one for me because I was a lobbyist. I used to be a lobbyist, deep into politics. And I always tell people, you don't know what you think you know about politics unless you've been in that game. I mean, people don't know. But some people like to use Christianity as kind of a shield for their political beliefs, as if God is going to say, well, yeah, you're right. You adhere to 6 out of the 10 commandments. You're good. You're good to go. That's not how that works. And they only adhere to 5, so they're worse than you. That's not how that works. I don't mind people voting their interests. I don't. I really don't. But don't use Christianity as your cover. It don't work that way. I'm anti-abortion, but to hell with homeless people. Huh? I'm anti-abortion, but justice for all, huh? Or I love everyone. Everyone's included, but I'm a warmonger. How do we reconcile this stuff? You can't, because it doesn't. It again, politics and the faith don't line up. Then they don't. Christians, we believe one is the infallible word, and the other one is full of amendments. And so it's full of flaws, it's full of errors. And these are that's a conversation I really want to have. That drives me absolutely bonkers. And again, no judgment, because I mean we've all been there. But you gotta pick a side. Yeah, vote your interest, but don't represent that foolishness. They're all flawed. They're all flawed. But we hide behind the faith. So if you want to be a Christian and you want to, be involved in politics, again, you need a practical way to do it. I'm going to show you the tools to not compromising your faith, but vote your interests. That's fine. You just can't make that political belief your faith. I, I I drove up to New Smyrna. I drive there all the time, actually. That's where the Flight Academy is. And I don't want to say this. I shouldn't have said that, but there's a person who has um he has a it lights up at night. It's a American flag. The post of the American flag is a cross. And I'm not going to say what else this person has up there, but America and Christianity. No, Christianity is bigger than America. Much bigger than America. You can't tie them together. That's why I hate when people say God bless America. No, God blesses everybody. America's not the only one blessed by God. Everybody gets blessed. That's why that drives me absolutely bonkers. But these are this policy is just another one of the areas in which I'm going to dive into. I'm not going to get into spiritual debates about scripture and whatnot. I'm not doing that. This is not the platform for that. I'm not going to get into a gender war. This ain't the platform for that. I'm not going to get into a condemning people to hell. This ain't the platform for that. But I am going to challenge though. I'm going to challenge the hell out of the way that we do things as a group, as a church, as a group of believers. I'm going to challenge the hell out of us because we need it. Because we got to do this thing better than we've been doing it. One of the other things that inspired me to have this conversation is my disappointment in the dominating message in our faith image. There's a thing called ethnic image. I'm going to call it faith image, how people view the faith. We used to have a long history of, yes, we have had a terrible history of doing terrible things, but I'm going to push back and say those people weren't practicing it correctly. The Christians promoting slavery weren't practicing it correctly. No. You know, Christians were anti-slavery. Christians, pushed helped to push the 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 tearing down of Jim Crow, the destruction of Jim Crow. Um, you know, Christians have done some great things. I want to get back to doing that good work. I want to get back to doing the work. There used to be a lot of homeless shelters run by Christian groups. Get back to feeding the hungry. Another group that we ignore that I do want to talk about tonight. I do want to talk about this tonight. I will hit on this a little bit tonight. Is prisoners, the forgotten people, the forgotten people. So I spent some time working behind the walls, and there was a time that really blew my mind. It blew my mind First of all, I always look at humans as humans. I really don't care what you've done. I just have that in me. Probably because I was a knucklehead and I've made mistakes, and so I've never considered myself greater than anybody except basketball because I got a hell of a jump shot. To hell with you, Michael Jordan. Um, choke y'all. But seriously, Michael Jordan, you can't take me. But seriously, working behind the walls. I remember that in the midst of these hundreds of inmates, these men, there was one time of the day in which they became very human. It was mail call. Now, some of these guys were the worst, quote unquote, worst of the worst of society. They were the worst. You know, they've done, some of them have done, committed heinous crimes. You know, you name it, they've done it. And I didn't view them differently, but I did have a very human moment with them during mail call because never had I ever seen a group get so quiet and look so vulnerable. This group, vulnerable. Could you imagine? The worst of the worst, vulnerable. A lot of y'all thinking, what thing? They're evil, bleep, 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 bleep. Vulnerable. Mail call. They got quiet, and everyone is hoping their name is going to be called. And I have this thing, right? It sucks. I hate it. I hate it. I'm the guy that goes to a third world country to a resort and wonders how these people are being paid and treated. I think about stuff like that. It's a terrible thing because you can't go on vacation and enjoy yourself. Whew. A good friend of mine, she'll tell you, it was my first time going to Jamaica. I was like, so how do they treat how these resorts treat treat Jamaicans, blah, 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 blah. You know. And so I'm going to pause for just a second. Get some things settled there. Yes, I'm the guy that went to Jamaica. I had to call my Jamaican friends. How do they treat their employees? That's how I am because I can't not see beyond meets the eye sometimes. They call it being woke. I'm not that woke, but I'm kind of woke sometimes, right? But when I was in the prison, I was working in the prison. I watched these guys get quiet, looking for mail, and they all would wait until the last name was called. And for the guys that got mail from family, correspondence from loved ones on the outside, it was like the feeling that they felt, the joy in their face, the excitement, hearing from children, hearing from parents, hearing from family, just the smallest things made their entire existence. I know a lot of y'all thinking, man, they deserve it. They do it. Yeah, Christians, we shouldn't be thinking like that, first of all. But the excitement, the joy. And for the ones that got nothing, the pain on their faces, it made them very human at that point for me. They were very human. And so I thought about, and Christian groups would go in there and they would go in and minister and pray with from time to time. It was few and far in between. But I thought that that's another way that we as Christians can practically do the work. That's a ministry in and of itself. Now, I'm not suggesting that women write men. No, that's a recipe for disaster. Let's be practical about this. But if you're a Christian and you got a family member in jail, write them a letter. Say hi, check up on them, see how they doing. Most of them are getting out. Most of them are going to need some sort of boost or faith or hope that when they get out of here, they're going to be able to not go back. Especially men. There's nothing more dangerous than a man without a purpose. That man can be very destructive. How do you think he ended up in prison to begin with? But that's a very practical way that we can help. A lot of these men have no contact with their families. They're isolated. And then isolated. Because I don't care what anybody says, there's nothing fun about prison. Oh, you give them 3 square meals a day, and they got cable. You're locked in a cement box for 365 days out of the year. Told when you can eat, shower, and poop. Unless you're, oh God, unless you're, unless you have the bathroom right there in the where you sleep. Oh my God, there's nothing pleasant about prison. I hate when people say that. Yes, hate. I'm going to use the word hate a lot. Hate when people say that. Well, prison is a country club. No, it's not a country club. But that's a whole other ministry of forgotten folks that we forgot about them. We don't care how they're treated. We don't care if they're in there with no air conditioning, broiling. We don't care. Just like we don't care about homeless people. We don't see these people. They're a nuisance to us. They're a nuisance to us. And it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way. So if you want to have a conversation and figure out how to address these things, tune in here every week. I'm going to be having these conversations. And as we build hopefully we can build the audience and start a bigger conversation. Because we got work to do. We got work to do. I'm tired of having to give this disclaimer when I tell people I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian, but I don't think you burning in hell, because that's terrible. It's terrible. I have to even say that. It's terrible that I have to even say that. We need to do better. And this is my challenge to, my fellow Christians. It needs to be a bipartisan, you know, omni-racial effort. Now, I'm familiar with the black church, but I love the white church too. We got work to do. We have work to do. So as we talk about race, I'm gonna pivot to racism. Let's pivot. Christians, we got to stop it. We have to stop it. Let's keep it real, Christians. Black Christians, yeah, y'all too. We got to stop this. We have to stop it. I think it was King that said Sunday morning is the most segregated. Sunday morning at noon is the most segregated time in America because either the church is white or it's black or Latina or brown or whatever you want to call it. We segregate it. I'm gonna share a story with y'all. One of the most pleasant experiences in a non-black church I ever had. I ain't gonna lie, it was awkward. Now I'm not gonna sit here and lie and say it wasn't awkward. It was, but I give them credit. I was over in Tampa, Florida. I was looking for just a church to go to. I wanted to go to church. I was looking for a church home actually when I lived in Tampa. I was looking for a church home, and I raised Baptist church. So I saw a Baptist church. So I walked into this church called Buchanan Baptist Church. Never forget it. Walked in. I was with another young lady at the time. We walked in together. We were the only black people in the entire church. And to their credit, they did everything to make us as comfortable as possible. Very welcoming. Very welcoming. Great service. Good word. Preacher was funny. Talked about how he goes to new members' houses to have dinner, or he'll invite them. I don't remember if he went to their house or he invited them over to his house for dinner. It's kind of a funny story. And y'all, some white people can sing too. Now I ain't seen them. They can sing. They sang a song that I didn't know at the time it's an old Christian song called "At the Cross." And I was listening to it. I'm like, why does this song sound so familiar? Because I listened to John P. Key, I'm a big John P. Key fan. So I was listening to John P. Key, and John P. Key sings a version of the song. Obviously, you know, has a little different twist to it, but um, but I'm listening to these words. I'm like, why does this song sound so familiar? Dog, this song sounds familiar. Why do I know this song? Got in my car, listened to the John P. Key CD, and boom, there's a song at the cross. But they sang that song. It was a good service, a good sermon, a good word, and they were so pleasant to us. And let me be honest, I've dealt with racist whites. I can smell them from a mile away. They're racist blacks. But I didn't feel that in this particular situation. Shout out to Buchanan Baptist Church. Didn't feel it. I felt the genuineness. It was genuine. They invited me to come on back. Everybody agreed, And we weren't the only new people there. There were other new people there. That's why I know it's genuine. They treated us all the same. We're all new. So they treated us all the same. It was a good time. Good time. There's a church but that's a good example of how we should be integrated. But here's an example that I don't like. I hate to say this, but I didn't like it. I was at a Catholic church. God bless my Catholic brethren. I was at a Catholic church, and it's a church called All Saints. I think it was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And that was something that they beat their chest about how diverse they were. They were extraordinarily diverse. They had white members, and African American members, actual different members from African nations, Haitian members, and they had members from the gamut. If I imagine what heaven would look, praise and worship looking like heaven, that would be it. But they beat their chests about it. It almost is like, okay, we get it. You're diverse. Stop beating your chest about it already. And they this one pastor ended every sermon talking about that particular fact. And that's when it seems to be more disingenuous at that point. Don't beat your chest about it. Stop beating your chest about it. Applaud them for being diverse, but let's not beat your chest about it. Because I'm going to criticize them really quick. We went to they had they used to have this festival. I think was it Summerfest. They had church service down at the festival at the lakefront. And I remember one of the preachers got up on the stage and asked people if they had their sword with them, right? And in a sea of hundreds of people, one person in the audience had their sword. It was me. Not that I'm bragging on that point, but I'm just pointing out that while they were diverse, y'all didn't carry y'all Bibles. That's neither here nor there. Talking about racism. It's one area that we as Black Christians, we got to work on as well. We have to admit that we have our biases and we judge just like they do, and it don't make us any better. It doesn't make us any better. And yeah, I'm going to be criticized. People want to talk about me. I don't care for this one. We got to do better. In order to represent, we can't keep separating the two. We've got to address the elephant in the room. And one of the biggest elephants in the room amongst us Christians is the racism. It is a problem. We can't be, We can't claim to love God that loves everybody, but don't love everybody. And we can't keep using excuses. Whoa, we ain't where we need to be. God, thank God, not where we need to be. Can't use that excuse anymore. We need to. It's 2022. We've got to move past that. We're gonna have those conversations. Those are gonna be some uncomfortable conversations, but we're gonna have them because I want us to do better. I don't want to be uncomfortable with my neighbor because we have different color scheme. I don't want to be uncomfortable with my neighbor because we share a different faith. Because we're called to love our neighbor. Love is the operative word. It's rather ironic of us to ask for grace daily, and we want the love and the blessings of the Lord, but God, we ain't gonna love and bless other people for the dumbest reasons. The dumbest reasons. And racism is one of them. And the last thing I want to talk about on this episode 1 of The Practical Christian here on Black Space and the conversations we're going to have. There's going to be many more, but I'm just hitting some of the major subjects. Money. Let's talk about money. Money. Capitalism is an economic system that we use here in the United States. Many countries. It is a means to an end. Yes, capitalism is a great system to a point. But we cannot intermingle that message with the message. And we cannot be so focused on money that we forget about the mission. Money is just a means to an end. It's just a tool. It's a tool. And actually, I do have one other subject I want to talk. I'm gonna hit on, but money is something else we got to talk about. Where's our humility? Why do we boast with brands and wow? No, we're gonna have those conversations. Some of the greatest representations of the faith, the people that greatest. You want to call them greatest Christians? You want to rank them, I guess. These people were not wealthy people. One of my biggest criticisms about the baton that King should have passed on to Jesse. Jesse. Now, Jesse, you shouldn't be living in the big old houses, Jesse. And people say, "Oh, Jesse needs to eat." Yeah, you can live off of, you don't have to eat filet mignon. I like my fried bologna sandwiches. Never wrong with no fried bologna sandwiches. Kidding, you don't do fried bologna. But you get what I'm saying. You can have impact. You don't need all the wealth to have impact. Unless you use the wealth to make impact. We're not doing that. Let's be honest. We ain't doing that. We look no differently than the people out here in the quote unquote world. We don't look no different. We look no different than them. There's no separation. Just like with our language and the way we dress and talk. Well, I suppose language and talk the same thing. We look the same. And again, I'm not telling you not to go out here and be successful. It's not what I'm saying. It's not what I'm saying. It's about what do you focus on? What are you representing? How do you represent? What is your goal and what drives you? Well, God is my father owned the cattle on 1,000 hills. Yeah, he do. But money is another conversation we're going to talk about. And lastly, this one gonna hurt, especially to some of my southern folk. Our health. Let's talk about our health. Now a brother and a grandfather to cancer. You know, painful. Brother was really painful. We were close. We were really close. But don't know the cause. I don't know what caused their particular illness. I don't even remember what my grandfather, what his cancer was. I know my brother had a brain tumor. I don't know necessarily what caused that. But outside of that, there's a lot of things that we suffer from, like diabetes and things that's a lot of the stuff is self-inflicted. It is self-inflicted. We don't have these conversations. We don't go to the doctor. We don't promote mental health. That all plays into health. We don't like talking to counselors. We don't. It's taboo. We don't do that. And listen, we can't pray our way out of this stuff, y'all. The food is good, but everything in moderation. And mental health is important. We got to be okay. Listen. I'm not a for listen. When I lost my brother, I lost a couple siblings. I needed counseling. I paid somebody to sit down on a couch and let's talk this out. Pray too, but listen. The reason that we have all these mental health professionals, there's a reason. They're not there for decoration. They're necessary, and we need to utilize them. There's a lot of good Christian professionals. There's a lot of good non-Christian ones too. Just because they're not Christians don't mean they're not good at what they do. We need to take advantage of this stuff. We need to work on our health, y'all. To quote the scripture, we need to live our life and live it more abundantly. The best way to live an abundant life is to live a healthy one, y'all. Get out here, be active, and get on that couch, not the sofa that you watch TV, the one where the professional gonna listen to you, tell them your problems. Professional person, I can't stop thinking about Rihanna and Kerry Washington. I wanted to marry Kerry Washington, even though she's well out of my league, and so is Rihanna. Jokes, y'all, jokes. Goodness gracious, as Christians, it's jokes. But you want to get on there and tell them that couch and tell them your problems. Work this stuff out. That's how you regain your sanity. Your mental health has a big effect on your physical health. But let's not talk about our physical health. Listen, ribs and barbecue chicken is delicious. Oh, it's so delicious. Whew, Lord, clear mercy. But we have to understand everything in moderation. We have to be active. We have to be accountable. It's important. We're going to talk about that too. The goal is to, for some of the subjects in which I'm not as well versed, I want to get some experts in here to have some real dialogue about how we can practically do this thing. Because yeah, you can't listen. I can't give up I can't give up the baked macaroni and cheese and the ribs, cold turkey. I can't give it up all the ribs and the macaroni and cheese because I'm human. And so we're going to figure out how to approach this thing practically speaking. Practically speaking. Because I want everybody to be able to walk the walk. And better represent so that we too can survive. And be, effective in this world. And be of some good to the world. Instead of just we lazy. We don't like to do the work no more. We spoiled. We spoiled. Especially as Americans. We spoiled. We spoiled. But that's all right. Your brother's gonna help you out. We're gonna do this thing together. We're gonna do it together. And we're gonna do it decent and in order. No, we're not, because I'm not decent and in order. I'm all over the place. As expressed in this last hour that I've had y'all undivided attention. But listen, it's been a good conversation. Like I said, I would love for y'all to come back here next week on the same back channel right here on Black Space to join the conversation. Next week, we're going to talk about the practical employee. I'm going to talk about work, your work environment, work-life balance, how to represent, how to walk, how to be a practical Christian at work. How do you approach this thing? What if you hate your boss? Mm. What if you hate your job? Mm. I'm supposed to do this, and I hate this place. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the value of work, because I think that we've devalued work, hard work. We've devalued it. We want things to be easy. We want things to be handed to us. We're going to talk about that next week, right here on Black Space Presents the Practical Christian, right here. If you want to join in the conversation, I have this conversation, like I said, on Fridays on Clubhouse at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which have these same discussions. We'll be talking this Friday about the practical employee. You want to get a preview, you want to join the conversation, join me there. You can also follow me on Instagram at Fly with Finley. Shameless plug there. And again on Clubhouse. But it's been a good conversation. I appreciate Nate for giving me the opportunity to bring this conversation to this platform as we continue to build Black Space. And again, remember to like and subscribe and share. Share this video. Can we go viral with something that ain't in where I don't have to say crazy stuff like, you know, buy a dog and die alone? Can I go viral for something positive for a change? Goodness gracious. Do I have to get ugly and nasty to get the message shared? Do I have to? I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I feel like a good positive message can get shared because somebody could use a picker up somebody. So I'm gonna try to be that pickup. So I want to thank y'all for joining me this evening and listening to me rant and rave for the past hour. I really do appreciate it. I really do appreciate it. And at some point, I'm gonna come up with some catchy closing phrase. I know I don't really have one. But I'll come with something that's gonna be catchy as we build the platform. And I'll put on better shirts so I look a lot better. Because this is just shout out to Epic Flight Academy. Great Flight Academy, by the way. Produce some of the best pilots in the nation. But on that note, I'm gonna end it there. I appreciate y'all for joining. It's been a great one. Join me here next time on Black Space. We have the conversation about the practical Christian. And again on Clubhouse on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the same conversation as we build, y'all. We build. This is my ministry. I have been your host, the Lamar Finley. Penny is my nickname, y'all. My daddy called me P for short. But y'all have a good one. I'm not going to say anything cliche like stay blessed because I'm not a fan of the cliches. But I do say this, though. This is my own saying. Have an amazing day. Have an amazing one. And I will see y'all on the flip side. Oh, my bad. Maestro, you listening?